Hey guys, we are going to be moving on into some more word problems. Some of them are probably ones that you could have figured out. Some of them may be reviews, some of them may be a little bit new. So, just making sure that you're comfortable with these. You'll be working on two different types today, kind of like what you did yesterday. The first type is dealing with consecutive integers. If you notice, like a list of consecutive integers, so consecutive just means like one right after another, okay, like in a row. So consecutive integers, all the numbers are just going by ones, okay? Even integers, so when you get down to working with the problems, you have to be really careful on making sure that you're reading the words really carefully, because even and odd, those words are just little and they can get missed if you're not reading really carefully. Okay, so you know what an even number is, you know what an odd number is. Obviously, we're dealing with integers, so we have those negatives as well. But we're going to have to represent that in an equation. So when I'm looking at how to represent that, if I have 4 consecutive integers, well, n is going to be my first one. That's just any number, right? It's just a variable. It represents any number. So I'm going to just say, for example, it's 1. Well, the next number would be 2. So that means I'm just adding 1 to it. So that would be n plus 1. That's how I would represent that number. And then I just keep going up by ones, right? So this one would be 3 because that's n, which is 1 plus 2, which gives you 3. And then the last one would be 4, and so forth, right? Now, going on to consecutive even integers, okay, n has to start with an even number. So let's say 2, okay? It's not always going to be 2, but I'm just making this up right now. So the next even number would be 4, 6, 8, 10, and so forth, right? So in order to get that, I'm going to have to take n, so 2, plus 2, right? I'm going to have to skip one in between there. So this would be like 4, this would be like 6, 8, and so forth. When I go to odd integers, well, the first one has to be an odd number. So if I say 1, well, the next one 3, 5, 7, 9, and so forth. So I'm adding 2 again. I'm just skipping 1, but I started with an odd number this time, so it's different than the even though they're represented very similarly. All right, so if I want to look at this example, there's something I'm going to add to this. So this is just kind of a part of an example. It says a sum of, and if I were you, just because, I like to annotate, I would be making notes to yourself. So like sum I know is plus of 3 consecutive integers. Okay, so I know it's not even or odd, it's just consecutive. Is I know is an equal sign, 120. It says use a variable to represent the unknowns and write the equation. Okay, so right here, they have represented the unknowns, okay? So I know that the first one, oh my goodness. The first one here is n, so that's just a number, right? I don't know what it is yet, but I need to be more specific on how I define this. So I would say n is equal to the first consecutive integer. And I'm kind of abbreviating. Notice I just put consec and int. Then obviously this is kind of small. Then the next one I would say the second consecutive integer, and then equal to the third consecutive integer. So I need to label each of those, and I'll do that in just a little bit with some examples as well. Okay, so after I label that, then I can go back to what I just erased, this underline part here, and it's saying the sum. So that means I'm taking each one of these and adding them and setting it equal to 120. So that's where the first one came from, the second one, and then the third one. Okay, so I added them all up because it was the sum, and it set it equal to 120. Well, now it's just an equation for me to solve. Okay, so let me do one real quick. Let's pick, I'll do number 4 with you. Okay, I'm going to blow it up a little bit more. All right, so first step, I need to define my variables, okay, my unknowns. So it says the sum, it's adding, of 3 consecutive even integers, okay, that word's important, even, is equal to, okay, so I know that's equal to 3 times the middle integer. Find the integers. Okay, so I'm finding all of them if it's telling me to find the integers. So I'm going to start out with defining my variables. So I have 3 consecutive even integers. So I'm going to say the first consecutive, again, I'm abbreviating, integer is equal to n. Okay. The second, I'm going to put little quotes here indicating that I'm saying consecutive integer. And if it's even, I know I have to skip one. So that's like adding 2. And then the third, again, consecutive integer is n plus 4 because I'm skipping one again. Okay. So now that I have those defined, it's telling me the sum of those 3. So in order to represent that in my equation, I can say n, because that was the first one, plus the second one. And notice I put it in parentheses just to kind of keep it straight. So I know that that's the second one, plus the third one. So n plus 4 equals, okay, so is equal to, I'm here now, 3 times the middle integer. Okay, well, this is my middle integer, this n plus 2. So that's saying 3 times that quantity. Okay, make sure that you put that in parentheses. All right, well, now I have my equation. Now I can go ahead and solve. I'm going to kind of bleed into the other question just because I have to write kind of big. So if I'm going to combine these, well, all of these are just adding. So all I have to do is, 1n plus 1n plus 1n gives me 3n. And then 2 plus 4 gives me 6. And then if I distribute over here, that gives me 3n plus 6. Okay, at this point, if I didn't realize that these were exactly the same, I would just keep solving and solve for n. But in this case, this is one of those special cases where n could be any even integer, right? Any even integer. So I can say all real even integers, okay? Because any of them are going to work since this is a infinitely many. Okay, but say for instance, I didn't get something to where it was like an infinitely many solutions, and I solved, and again, this is just pretend, say I got n equals 4. Okay, well, that would be my first integer, but then my second integer, I'd go back up here and go, okay, well, 4 plus 2, the next one would be 6, and then I go back up here again and say, okay, n, which is 4, 4 plus 4 gives me 8. Those would be my 3 consecutive. So I need to make sure that I'm answering the question at the very end. So in this case, find the integers. Well, it could be all real even integers. All right, let's switch over to the next problems that you have. All right, so with these problems, you're going to be using charts. And this is just a different strategy. If you look at the top, it just says, the charts are just meant to be like a graphic organizer, okay? Just to kind of organize your thoughts. A lot of these are just systems of equations. So with that in mind, we're going to do a couple examples. These can be kind of challenging, but you guys will be totally fine, okay? If you have any questions, obviously reach out, send me screenshots or send me your paper so I know kind of what question you're talking about and we can work through whatever. You're only going to be doing the first 5 of these, and I'm going to be doing 2 of them with you. So you really only have 3 to do on your own. I still want you to do the 2 examples that I do, just so you're comfortable with those as well. Okay, so you're only doing 5 total. And I'll explain that in the directions as well. So you're really just doing the ones that say example 1, example 2, 3, 4, and 5, okay? There are a ton more on here, and you're not doing all of those today because that would be way too much, okay? I will say that the answer key to the ones that you're doing today is posted at the very bottom. Same with the other one. So with these consecutive integer problems, the answer key is at the bottom as well. So make sure that you are checking those out. And I try to make it as clear as possible, but again, let me know if you have questions. All right, moving back to these using charts. Again, they're just graphic organizers, and I'll show you how to use them. All right, so example number 1 says, at a New York subway station, the number of 8 ride tickets sold was 20 times the number of 20 ride tickets sold. The total number of tickets sold represented 3,600 rides. How many 8 ride tickets were sold? Okay, so I like to start out with, so same thing you're going to do is define your variable, but in this time, you're going to make sure that you only have one variable that you're working with. So I'm not going to have 2 different letters. I'm going to have one, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So let me think about the information presented. It says the number of 8 ride tickets sold was 20 times the number of 20 ride tickets sold. Okay, so if I need 20 times something and I don't know what that something is, that's going to be my variable. Okay, so I don't know how many 20 ride tickets there are, but I need 20 times that for the 8 ride tickets. So if I don't know what 20 ride tickets are, that's just going to be T. Okay, you can use whatever variable. I just use T for tickets. Now, if I need 20 times that of the 20 ride tickets for the 8 ride tickets, then I'm going to represent that number with 20T because that's 20 times the 20 ride tickets. Okay, so the next part is the number of rides per ticket. I'm also going to kind of pause for a second and go over here and say, okay, T, well, that represents the number of 20 ride tickets. Okay, make sure that you are explicit about this. Okay, now that I know what my variable stands for, I'm clear on that, I can keep going on. Well, number of rides per ticket. Well, it tells you 8 ride tickets. Well, you're going to get 8 rides out of that. 20 ride tickets, you're going to get 20 ride tickets out of that. And then this last column, you can see here that they put these like times and then equals the total number of rides. Well, the number of tickets times the number of rides per ticket is going to give you the total number of rides that you can ride. So for this one, for the 8 ride tickets, I'm taking 8 times 20T, which is going to give me 160T. And the last one here for 20 ride tickets, well, I'm taking 20 times T, which just gives me 20T. Okay, so notice that I didn't use this 3,600 rides. Okay, this is going to help me create the equation afterwards. I'm not putting it in my graphic organizer because that was not pertinent information with the information that belonged there. Okay, so now with my equation, well, that's saying, okay, there's a total of 3,600 rides. Well, this is the total number of rides for 8 tickets. This is the total number of rides for 20 ride tickets. So if I combine both of those, that's going to tell me how many rides there are in total, which they told us was 3,600. So for my equation, I have 160T plus 20T equals the total number of rides, which was 3,600. Okay, and notice that these said total number of rides, it all kind of matches up. So this is the total for 8 tickets, the total for 20 ride tickets, and then the total for everything. All right, so at this point, I'm just solving. I'm going to get, when I add these together, 180T equals 3,600. Divide by 180 to get T by itself. Whoa, that was not a good 8. Divide by 180. So T is going to be equal to 20 tickets. I had to think about that. Okay, but T, what does T represent? Okay, those are the number of 20 ride tickets. The question's asking how many 8 ride tickets. So I didn't answer the question, but I can use that in order to answer my question. So if I come back up here and I look at, oh my goodness, it's lagging. And I look at this right here. Well, I know that T is 20, but the number of 8 ride tickets is 20 times whatever T is. So I would be taking 20 times 20, because that's what T is, and get 400. So make sure that you are super clear about 400 what, okay? Make sure you're labeling 8 ride tickets. And then box in or circle your final solution. Okay, so the chart is just meant to organize some of your information. I'll do one more of these and then let me know if you have any questions. Remember the answer key is down there. All right, we're going to jump down to example number 3. So notice not all of the charts are going to be filled in with like the different topics or the headers or whatever the first one had. You're going to have to be able to think critically about what's going on there. So here's an example of one of those types. So with these types of problems, I'm going to read it through first before I decide kind of what goes where. I always have like 2 situations that are going, or 2 kind of objects that are going to be in these boxes here. And then I can, after I get those objects, I can kind of figure out what the headers are up here. So I'm going to go ahead and read it first. The length of a blue rectangle is 18 centimeters more than the width. Okay. A white rectangle, okay, so we got two different rectangles going on. A white rectangle is 6 centimeters shorter and 3 centimeters wider than the blue rectangle, and it has a perimeter of 126. Okay, find the dimensions of both the blue and the white rectangle. Whew, okay, that was a lot of information in just a few short sentences. Well, let's back up a second. So start with your two objects. So the two objects here would be your blue rectangle and your white. Okay, so now we have to kind of go back and figure out what they said about those different things. So the topics that they kind of have, they gave you information about two different kind of parts of this rectangle. If you think about it, you will see that the blue rectangle has 18 centimeters more than the width. White rectangle is 6 centimeters shorter, 3 centimeters wider. Okay, we're dealing with length and width, right? So those are going to be our two headers here. And the more you do these, the easier this part is going to become. Okay, I know it's probably a little overwhelming right now. But it also mentioned perimeter. Okay, well, perimeter doesn't fit in my chart anywhere, so I'm going to keep that in mind for the equation. All right, some parts of this you will use just to figure out your equation. Now, it says find the dimensions of both the blue and the white rectangle. So find the dimensions, that kind of gives you a hint on what goes here with the length and width as well. Okay, so that should tell you that the perimeter doesn't belong there. That perimeter part is just going to help us solve for that length and width towards the end. So now I need to figure out different things to put in my chart to organize it. So the first sentence again said the length of a blue rectangle is 18 centimeters more than the width. Okay, so if I'm thinking about the blue rectangle, if it's 18 centimeters more than the width, the length, I probably should underline that. So the length is 18 more than the width. Well, if I don't know what the width is, I can say that that's my variable, right? So for my blue rectangle, the width is W. Make sure that you have it matched up in your chart. So the length, if it's 18 more, I'm going to have the width plus 18. Okay, so now that I have the blue kind of filled out, I can go to the white. It says the white rectangle is 6 centimeters shorter. Okay, well, that's talking about length. So the white rectangle is going to be 6 shorter than W plus 18. So if I do 6 less than that, that's going to be W plus, 18 minus 6 is going to be 12. Okay, that's where that 6 less than came in. And then I still have 3 centimeters wider. So if it's wider, it's, plus 3. So I'm taking the width of the blue and I'm adding 3 to it because it's 3 centimeters wider. Okay, and it also tells you that it has a perimeter of 126. Okay, keep in mind, this is still talking about the white rectangle because if you read the sentence, it says a white rectangle is 6 centimeters shorter and 3 centimeters wider than the blue rectangle and has a perimeter of 126. So that's still talking about that white rectangle. So before I go on to do anything else, my chart's already filled out. So this is all the information I'll be using. Notice again that I'm only using one variable. And I want to make sure that I define what that variable is. Don't forget this part, I almost did. So W represents, if I kind of just trace it across here, that's going to represent the width of that blue rectangle. Okay, so make sure that you explicitly state that. So write that out. So the width of the blue rectangle. Again, you can always look at the answer key too to see if you're on the right track. Now, at this point, I know that I have to deal with this perimeter. So I need to think to myself, how am I going to represent perimeter? What is perimeter? So if I'm thinking about perimeter and I want to say it in general terms, I can say, all right, perimeter is 2 of the lengths plus 2 of the widths, right? So that's going to be 2 lengths plus 2 widths. And this is just me thinking out loud. Equals perimeter. Okay, well, let's see here. I only know the perimeter of one of the rectangles, so I can only use one of the information, one of the sets of information I have. I only know the perimeter of the white one, right? So I can only use the length and the width of the white one to figure out what the perimeter is. So if I know 2 times the length, well, the length I know is this quantity w plus 12. So 2 times w plus 12, so that's 2 of the length, plus 2 of the width. Well, the width is this quantity w plus 3. And that's going to be equal to that 126 that it told us. Okay, well, now I have my equation. I can solve for w. Once I know what w is, I can go back to my chart and figure out the rest. So I'm going to go ahead and solve real quick. I'm going to pause it so you don't have to sit through it. So once you solve, w equals 29. Okay, I need to also keep in mind 29 is just not going to be automatically my answer. It told me to find the dimensions of both the blue and the white rectangle. Well, w, if you come back up here in what we wrote, w only represents the width of the blue rectangle. So I need to be clear on what I am figuring out. So I know that I'm going to kind of organize it over here. Blue and white. Okay. So I can say the length and then the width. And I'm just going to kind of make my own little table, which I don't do on the answer key, but as long as you are very clear, you're good. Make sure to label as well because they're talking about centimeters here, so I need to make sure that it includes centimeters. Okay, so back up. I know that w equals 29, so let's start there. W equals 29, that's the width of the blue. So if I go over here, I can say 29 centimeters. Okay, that one was easy to kind of put down. Now I can go back and say, all right, well, the length of the blue is w plus 18. So if I take 29 plus 18, all right, that's going to give me what? 47, is that right? So again, got to put that centimeters. Next, I have the white. So again, I'm still using w. That's still going to help me solve. So I'm taking w plus 12 for the length. So that's going to give me what? A total of 41. And again, I'm kind of doing the math in my head fast. So if you notice a mistake somewhere, just politely say, hey, I think this one's a little messed up. Can you look at that one more time? And that's totally fine. And then if I look here for the width, w plus 3, so that's going to be 32 centimeters. All right. Now that I've done all of this, I can kind of go back to my example and reread and make sure it makes sense. So is the length of the blue rectangle 18 more than the width? So if I come and look at the actual numbers that I have, is this actually 18 more? Okay, that makes sense. That one's good. The white rectangle is 6 centimeters shorter. Okay, so if I look at the length, well, that is 6 centimeters shorter here. And then if I go to, and it says 3 centimeters wider. Okay, it is 3 centimeters wider. That looks good. The perimeter of the white one is 126. So that would be 2 41s plus 2 32s. You think about that. And that should be also 126. So this right here is my final answer. Okay, notice that there's quite a few things that I had to solve for in this one. So make sure that you're reading the question at the very end and you know exactly what it's asking for. Again, I know that these can be challenging. I only have you doing the first 5 and I just did 2 of them with you. Do your absolute best to do the other ones on your own and try to figure out how to fill out charts. If you get stuck, that's totally fine. You have the answer key to look at. If that doesn't make sense to you, then obviously reach out and I will help you because I know these can be challenging and it's even harder on remote. I will point out that the very last one, example number 5, does not have a chart, but you're going to have to create a chart, okay? So make sure that you make your own here, even though it doesn't provide one, all right? All right, let me know if you need anything. Good luck today. Have a good one.